Hey friends, it's DRD with Coaching with DRD, and I am here going live to discuss a topic that is dear to my heart. So let me share my slide. Um, I've been thinking a lot about personal growth, and I get questions about do I um, how do I grow? How do I go from where I am now to where I want to be? Or I get questions about how do I start, right? And so when I think about starting and going through that process, one of the things I think about is how I have to be intentional. And so I want to talk to you about the mastering the art of intentionality and how being intentional is really the key to um, to reaching your full potential. So let me stop sharing because let me see. Okay, so I wrote down a couple of points because when I think about my journey in personal growth and where I was 3 years ago is not where I am today. I feel like I have went from a person who was very insecure, low confidence, and also um, yeah, I just wasn't sure about my place in this world, if that makes sense. So I was living my life and I was surviving. So I don't know if any of you can relate to that. It's like you're living your life, but you're not really fulfilled and you're kind of just surviving and you're making it through each day. And whether that means you're in a family situation where you're raising kids and you're working and you're doing all of that, or if you're just trying to figure life out as well. And you're single and you're just going to work, coming home and sitting on the couch, watching TV. And then you're just surviving. You're not really driving. And so one of the things that I felt when it came to being intentional was I had to decide that I wanted to grow. And then once I made that decision, I had to put my growth as number one. And so the first thing I had to do was I had to be intentional about making a plan. So it wasn't enough to just say that I wanted to grow. It wasn't enough to just think that growing was where I wanted to be. I really had to know and really make a plan for my growth. And so that was the first thing I did. The second thing I did was I had to prioritize where that fit in my life. So my life was really, really busy, but I knew that when I sat back, and for those of you who know my story, I had gone through a divorce between 2020, 2021. And so one of the things that I remember not wanting to get out of the bed sometimes but I remember thinking, like time is not going to stop. So time is going to keep going. Time is constant. It doesn't stop for any of us, right? And so I thought like, okay, now I feel like crap. Now I feel like I have to start my life over. Now I think life isn't fair. But 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, time is gonna keep going. And so I had for myself to think, where do I want to be in 2 years from now? Because in 2 years from now, yeah, right now I'm in a lot of pain and I'm grieving and I'm going through so much, but in 2 years it's gonna be different. And so my thought was, well, how do I prepare myself for 2 years from now? And I thought, well, I need to prepare myself mentally, spiritually, physically. So mentally, it was listen to podcasts, listen to affirmations, um, listening to sermons because I'm a Christian. So I was listening to sermons to help me as well. And so I had to be intentional about that. So I had to make a plan. So the second thing I had to do was I had to prioritize it. So that meant for me, it meant I could not binge watch, even though binge watching Netflix during the pandemic was like the best thing ever. I found myself having to take a step back from that. And instead of binge watching a show, I would binge watch podcasts or binge listen to sometimes even podcasts or things that or read a book or listen to a book on Audible. Like I would do things like that because I knew in order for me to grow, I had to create a plan. Then I had to make it priorities. That meant that when I was walking, because when, I said earlier, when it comes to like um, being at that point where you feel like I don't know where my life is going to end up. This is like the worst I felt in my life because I've gone through this big breakup of a divorce. Sometimes it's hard to see the next day. And so for me, those three areas, spiritually, physically, mentally, even emotionally, growing emotionally, were important because again, I knew that life was not going to pause. Time was not going to stay still. So that meant that even though I didn't feel like growing, I didn't feel like reading a book, I didn't feel like listening to a podcast, that I knew that eventually, when time went on and I look up and it's 2 years later, that I really wanted to be a better person than I was in 2020. So the third thing I did was and it's important is to have somebody hold you accountable, is to not try to do it on your own, but to have someone hold you accountable and say, you know what, I know I'm in this place in my life that I've gone through something really traumatic, and I don't really know how this is going to turn out. I don't know how my life is going to be, but would you hold me accountable with a little thing like making sure that I listen to one podcast a week or that I read 10 pages of this book. Like start with the simple things, to be honest. Start with something that is easy to do. So don't make it big. Like don't make it like, oh, I want to read 3 books in 2 months. Just make it as simple as possible because when you do that and you see the little momentum, that's when you start to get and you want more progress. And so when I think about momentum and progress, I think about when you first start working out. So when I first started, so in 2020, I was like, okay, I need to I'm out of shape. What who am I? Who am I fooling, right? I am out of shape. I need to start back working out. I don't like how I look in pictures. Like it was things like that. And so I found that I started walking. And I remember like where I lived, there was a trail and me and my dog, we'll walk on it and I could only go so far before I was tired. And then I would turn around and go back home. But I did it every day. And eventually I was able to go further and further and further. And to the point where one time I remember walking for like an hour. And I said, oh my gosh, I finally got to that point where I'm not out of breath. I'm not, um, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it took me this. I'm not any of that. I've done it. But it's because I took one step at a time. And so I really encourage you if it's something you really want to do, to not go, oh my gosh, I want to make it so big, but just to do something really small. And I know it's hard, especially when you're at a point where, again, as I said earlier, you feel like you're just you're not even living your life to the fullest. You're just surviving. And that's the best word I can use, how I felt back then. I just felt like I was surviving, like I was going through the motions and I was trying to see how to explain it. I guess that would be the biggest thing. I just felt like I was going through the emotions. I was living life, but not to the fullest, not to my fullest potential. And I was just surviving. Um, and so I would encourage you if you feel like that, you feel like, I'm really just surviving in this world. I'm not living my life to the fullest. I'm not living my life to my fullest potential. In fact, I don't even know what my fullest potential is, right? I know there may be something more for me to do, but I have no idea what it is. Then I would encourage you to reach out to someone that could to help guide you. And that's what a life coach is someone that's, partners with you to help you reach your full potential. And so for me, when it comes to intentionality, I think intentionality is the beginning of your personal growth journey because it helps you to put things into perspective, but it also it also gives you like this, I don't know how to say it, like a carrot I say in front of you where you're like, I want this. Like I'm being intentional about growing because I know that time is going to pass and I want to be better in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 months than I am today. And so when you think about it in that way, then you understand that it's going to take intentionality for you to grow and for you to be the person that you want to be. So that is what I wanted to share with you. But and don't forget, so I want to go back over the 3 points. One, how to be intentional about your personal growth. One, make a plan. Don't just wing it. Don't just be like, take a book out. Yeah, I think I'm gonna read that every weekend, and you think it's gonna happen. It's probably not gonna happen. And two, so make a plan. Two, prioritize what you want to do. So before you sit down and binge watch a show or get caught up in some activity that is not related to your personal growth, do your personal growth first. So do that. Read that book, listen to a podcast, listen to an audible book, whatever that looks like for you. Do that first, and then say, okay, now I'm going to have my fun time, or I'm going to watch these episodes of this show. And then the other thing is, get somebody to hold you accountable because accountability is key. I have had situations where someone has held me accountable for things, and I will wait. I may wait till the last minute before I check in with them, but you believe you me, I get it done because I am not the one to go to a person and say I didn't do it. I'm really the one that says, "Oh, I did it right before the call." And so having someone hold you accountable in the area where you want to grow and the things you want to do is going to be key to doing it. So I want to share that with you. I am um whenever you see this, if you see this in October, I am having a webinar on the 28th of October on seasonal depression. And the reason for that webinar is because the time is about to change. And we know as we get into the fall and the winter, for me, it's hard when it starts getting dark early and I have to push myself to go outside to still be active. And there's something that happens. And so if you experience some sadness or just moodiness and things when that time changes, I encourage you to attend this webinar because it will give you those natural remedies and strategies to help you through this time because it's not going away. We can't do anything about the fact that it gets darker earlier. That's never going to change the rest of our lives. But if I can give you strategies to help you to get through this season, then it will help you be a better person. So the link is on my page, and I will have some more webinars a little bit later in the year, one in November, one in December. I just haven't decided on the topic yet. So stay tuned for that. But as I leave you in this video, keep going, keep growing, keep moving forward. Bye for now.